it's time to pick up the mic for a second. I was struggling with what to talk about today. And it's funny. Sometimes you just have to, do your due diligence and look around and you can find a subject. But this is something that's been coming up for a while. And it's been in the manosphere well before I joined it. And even in the conscious community circles, this goes around and around and around and around and around. And it keeps being circular. So this has been going on for a minute, alpha your way through it. We got to get it out the mud. Black men have to force change in our community and the society, and we have to do it heroically. Like we have to bond together and bind together and fight racism and fight misandry and start all these kick-ass businesses and dominate the world, right? That's what they say. And they castigate black men for not being able to do it, not being able to wield power. And then with our own self-hatred, and this is one way black men exhibit self-hatred, that image of us and that opinion of us gets turned inward to where if we can't overcome the barriers that people put in front of us and the idea that we're taught with, the self-image that we're taught with by society, and not only society, by our own women, then it turns inward on itself and we attack ourselves. And then this is what you get. You get that if you were a real man, or if you really were able to do something, or you really weren't raised by your mother, or you really, whatever defective thing that happened to you in your life, that you're to blame. You're to blame that you're not successful. You're to blame that you're not a kick-ass. You're just not working hard enough. You're not plowing 80 hours a week. You're not studying hard enough. You're not reading hard enough. You're not forceful enough. And that's the reason that not only you fail, but the black men around you fail, and your children fail, and your family fails, and your black women fail, and the whole black community fails because you're not able to overcome all these obstacles. You're not able to level your own playing field. And that's because you didn't overcome the problems that you didn't cause. Black men, anyway, let me tell you what I'm talking about. There's a video that Jason Black put out that asking, do black men deserve respect? It's always a silly question to me. Do you deserve respect? It's like asking, do you deserve air? Do you deserve water? Do you deserve food? And you're supposed to come out working for everything that you get. It's just odd to me. Just really odd and strange to me that this still persists, and it actually grows. That's where we get this alpha male attitude versus beta male attitude. This, high value men versus low value men, stuff like that. We set ourselves against each other, right, instead of cooperating. And that's literally self-hatred, because really what it is you want to get away from the image that's been projected on you. Not something that you caused, not something that you actually actively participate in or actively set the conditions up for. But it doesn't matter because you're responsible for it. And let me answer the question about, do black men deserve respect, or whatever group deserves respect? Okay? Unless you've done something to get disrespected for, then yes, you deserve respect. Why do you deserve respect? Just as a black man or a human being, period, is because you give it. Respect is not a thing, a cachet, a prize, right? Respect is a two-way street. Respect is earned because it's given. There's something we call mutual respect. You give it, you get it. It's not one of those things that you earn it and people give it and you don't give it back. There's a common level of respect. Just like there's a common level in any society of people eating. In any society, I don't care what it is. In any society, there's a common level of food, of water. Otherwise, your society doesn't grow. And I think that's what we're missing here. And this is going to be all over the place because these things aren't connected. And I haven't done enough thought to connect these things in sequential order. So forgive me. And I think that's what used to happen back in the day when folks had to band together to survive. There was never anything about earning respect. There was never anything about earning respect. You go down south, even places today, They don't talk about you having to earn respect. Okay, you're given respect off the rip because what? You're a human being. You are part of the group. And the only way you not get respect is you've done something to get disrespected. For instance, and this is just a logical thought, and I'm sure Green Gorilla probably would love this aspect, this philosophical thought. Say, according to Jason Black, that you don't deserve any respect, right? And you're an average workaday dude working an average job, going about your business, even if it's picking up cans out of the parking lot so that you can exchange them and get some food to eat. And out of nowhere, a bunch of people come actually cussing you out, calling you names, spitting on you. It's out of nowhere. You just happen to be there, they happen to be there, and they start calling you names and spitting on you. The majority of people said, what was the reason that you disrespected that man or disrespected that person, right? First thing you would say. Society has already given that person, that creature, that human being, a level of decency, a level of human respect already. So people coming in trying to take that away from them. That dis means to do what? Take away, remove from. How can you disrespect somebody if they don't already have something to take away from? That's what I'm talking about. And I know why Jason Black is doing it, because nobody's listening to you, bruh. You've been trying to bring down the so-called apparatus of MGTOW, or as you see it, of the red pill community as you see it, the red pill circles as you see it. And you try to bring it down and say that it's no good, it's not helping people, but it still grows. It still grows. There's still people in that circle. There's still the community is still attracting people, and basically, you know it, people that show their faces and show their degrees and sometimes even show their earnings. There's one guy that makes way more money than you do and has for a very long time. He's in this space. Way more money. There's a couple guys. They actually showed him. 4 or 5 guys. They actually showed him. Guys that are in this space, that in this circle jerk that you call unaccomplished basement dwellers. They make way more money than you do. Way more educated. So what you say about this space, about this cubbyhole, this coven, as you call it, is basically patently false. And I know the majority of your listeners, your subs, are women, which is fine, and you need to cater to their sensibilities because they're the ones that complain about us. But anyway, that's a sidebar. Let's get back to respect. Let's get back to his premise of how you get respect, and his premise about how black men need to come together and get it out the mud, and which is basically, he thinks that this is black talk, right? This is black sensibility, right? This is the same old bootstrap argument that white people have been talking about for black men for the last 150 years. That if black men were worthy, they would balance their own playing field. They cause their own environment, basically fix their own environment and fix their own people, right? And the example of it is because white men have done it. A small group of white men came and established a country, which is not true, and fought against the elements and succeeded, which is not true. White people have never existed outside of a system. And white people started teaching white kids as a system, as a group, white boys as a group, going back to the 1840s, when the vast majority of them were uneducated and unsuccessful. As a group, they knew back then they needed to invest in their boys, invested in their children for their success. You can read the literature. It's there. You can read their own history. Why do you think they started public schools and investing in their children? And over generations, it yields them success. It yields them a measure of power. They didn't wait till they got to be an adult, got to be 25, 30, 40 years old, and all of a sudden, okay, how come you didn't do anything? Or we need to come together and change things now that we're 40 years old. Look at all the successful people, including Robert F. Smith, one of our black billionaires. Robert F. Smith started training for his position, his trying to training. His parents started him out when he was like 8 years old. It didn't start in his 20s. It didn't start in his 30s. The billionaire Robert F. Smith was actually started training when he was 8 by parents that knew how to invest in him. The black community, what I call the black gynocracy, does not believe in investing in its boys. That's like only 10% of them actually read at grade level. And you expect to get a dividend at the end out of that? You expect those men to come up and change the world? You can track a boy's success, a man's success in this infrastructure simply by tracking educational patterns. The old saying, you get out what you put in. The black community is the only community in the world that I know of on the planet that expects a dividend on something that it never invested in. You expect a dividend out of your men, out of your Gen X boys, when as a community you never invested in them in the first place. Why do you think, just take it as an aside, why do you think the poorest areas in the country get the poorest schools? The poorest states by revenue 9 times out of 10 have the poorest schools in the country. They always rank at the bottom. There's a reason with that. It's not just the education, it's the investment in your children. So you would get healthy adults and get a return on the other end. Every other country in the world knows that. Look at the Chinese. The Chinese started re-educating their children in the 1960s. They started investing in their children in the 1970s. They upped the investment in the 1990s. They said they were going to produce, by the time they got to the 2000s, they said they were going to produce 1 million programmers and 1 million engineers a year coming out of China. And that was in 1997. So now, 23 years later, that's like China's actually rivaling the United States for power and technology. Didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't come out because they invested in their men. They invested in their children, who happen to be boys. You know what I would say as far as respect? Do black men deserve respect? Forget respect. The hell with respect. Let's start doing something that's practical. You want to change the black community? You're not going to change the black community overnight. You're not going to do it with grown-ass men that have already been situated. You're going to have to change it from the ground up. Basically, you're going to have to change it from the seed level. Hell, your feminists knew that. They knew that in 1972. Why do you think feminism is so pervasive? It's because they started in 1972. Did they march? Sure they did. Did they change things immediately? No, they didn't. But they started with children. And 50 years later, this is what you got. Feminism dominates this society. It does. Because they invested in the children early. Regardless of what you think, whether you like them or not, that's what they did. You think all these kick-ass women, black women that come out that are dominating in politics and all that kind of stuff, that this came out of nowhere? No, they started investing in black women in the 80s and exclusively started investing in black girls in the 80s, even though they've been doing that since the 1890s. But they made a press to start investing in black girl programs in the 80s. So is it any wonder 40 years later you got all these so-called kick-ass women out in politics and out in the world? If black women want to change something, they automatically start something for girls and then tell you to do something opposite, which is basically just work harder. Work harder, you'll get respect. Work harder, you'll change us, you'll change the community, and change your outcomes, which is only partially true. But as a group, the only way you can change the group, change your society, your subculture, is with the children. America knows that. White people know that. Jewish people know that. Why do you think they have all the Jewish schools? They know if they don't invest in these children, they're not going to get a return on the other end. Why do you think immigrants by the third generations rise? Why do you think when grandpa comes here, they got a little tiny house and grandpa's picking fruits and vegetables for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and the next generation gets an education and gets a decent job, right? And then the next generation, you have scholars and PhDs and masters that move up the value chain because grandpa picked fruits and vegetables and worked in the fields for 12 hours a day for 50 years so he can invest in his children, invest in his son and for his boys, so they can actually push the rock forward up the value chain. We're far too busy here, especially online, trying to fix fucking broken men, thinking that that's going to change. That man is going to retain what he still has because he's lost too much time, and his basic idea in education is his basic groundwork, the way his worldview is already set. Now we can fix them so they can function, but we can't change the whole society unless we stop producing, which is what the discussion is about. Are we doing therapy sessions? I'm tired of doing therapy sessions, online therapy sessions in the black community. Black men do need to go and work their issues out with their shrink. They do. And put all those psychology degrees to work. And everybody brags about they got the answer to the cheat code for the successful black community, and they don't. Because if you did, you'd be producing kick-ass men left and right. And if you're producing kick-ass men left and right, the converting men, trust and believe, you wouldn't be on YouTube talking about it, right? You'd be internationally known. You'd be a Jordan Peterson. The black community of the United States would be giving you grants to fix these people that are broken. So y'all need to stop all that stuff that one person has the answer and the other person doesn't, because nobody has the answer, because nobody has the receipts. Just like COVID-19, either you have dead people or you don't. Either you have dead people or you don't. If the disease does not exist, then people are not dead. COVID-19, you can say that it doesn't exist, you don't believe in it, but you have almost 600,000 people dead. You have 600,000 dead bodies to tell you that you're wrong. Can't sweep that up. If you got a kick-ass program, you got a kick-ass way of doing things, which Umar Johnson said that years ago about fixing black boys and fixing black men. And guess what? 10 years later, he's still trying to fix it. Trust and believe, I've been in the conscious community for a very long time, and trust and believe nobody has the ultimate answer on how to do this stuff, because guess what? You're still fighting against racism in an uneven playing field, which is made more uneven by your women. Dr. Johnson was just talking about this, about an article that I sent him that a sub told me about that I was unaware of in 1991. One of the first all-boys schools was suggested or tried because of what was going on with the crack era in Detroit. They tried an all-male education, which does work because they found out that it does work in 1912. America does know that single-sex education does work, and it actually works better than what we have now. They already know this. So they decided to try this in 1991 with 3 schools, elementary, middle school, and high school, for black boys to start correcting some of the problems that were going on in the neighborhood. They couldn't do it with single mothers. They couldn't do it in the family. If they could have, they would have. Okay, they tried to do something to kind of ameliorate what was going on, which is something that Moynihan said back in 1965. And just like in 1965, when Moynihan suggested it, and suggested as a remedy for the black family, the same people shot it down, that tried to shoot this one down in 1991 with a federal lawsuit. That single-sex education, single-sex atmospheres were inherently sexist and discriminatory toward women. Mind you, these are your men that you're trying to fix. Mind you, you're trying to find a remedy that will solve your problems, because better boys will give you better outcomes, will give you better men, will give you a better return on the other side. It's your women that fought against it in 1965. It's your women that allied with the white women to take jobs away from black men, and still do to this day. Still do to this day. Black women have always wanted to limit your power. They still do. When they proposed this school in 1991, it was your black women that filed the federal lawsuit. The same forces that stopped it in the 1960s and 70s, the same forces that stopped it in 1991, which is the same forces that tried to stop it when Obama tried to do it in 2014, 2015. In fact, that Dr. Johnson said it was black feminists and black women passing around petitions to stop the very remedy that they needed, that black men needed and black boys needed. So is it any wonder that 50, 30, 10 years later, you still have the same problems where only 10% of your black boys can read at reading level? And everybody's happy about it because that's what you intended to happen. And then when they get 25, after not giving them anything, not investing in them, you want a return. Let's just face it. Black people are the only people on the planet that want a return for nothing. You want this boy to go pro. You want this boy to be a millionaire so that you can actually suck from the tip. You can actually profit from his hard labor, from his luck. Really, it's luck. If they walk that gauntlet and walk through that landmine and get to the other side and actually become successful, now everybody wants them to help everybody else be pulled up, right? You didn't clear them landmines. You didn't actually give him a map through the gauntlet. You didn't even give him the knowledge when he was a boy. But if some lucky happenstance that he happens to grow up, he happens to actually know something or be able to do something, then you want him to do what? You want him to invest back into something that nobody ever invested in him. Because Jason Brack always talks about a single mother raised, and that's how come that's not successful. That's not true. A single mother can teach her 3-year-old to read. A single mother can take 15 minutes a day out of her busy day to sit down with her baby, to sit down with her child, to sit down with her kid to read. 15 minutes. It should be 30 to 1. It should be an hour. I cut it down to 30. Now you can't even get 15 minutes. But they can take hours to watch reality TV. They can take hours to keep their head buried in the phone. But they can't take 15 minutes to read to their child. They can't take an hour to make sure the child gets his homework done. They can't take 10 minutes to not even to show up, to call down to the school or the school board to see what's going on with their kid and how come their kid doesn't have an education. They can't use their political clout to sit on that school board and actually do something actively for their boys. To actually do something where these boys have as level a playing field as they can, right? They don't do that. Nothing in nature thrives in hostile soil. Let me say that again for you niggas in the back. You so-called alpha men. You so-called pro-black. You so-called whatever the fuck that you think you are, right? Let me say for you fucking morons in the goddamn back, right? Nothing thrives in hostile soil. Your boys, your men are not going to thrive in this environment if you make it hostile for them. Can they survive? Yes, they have. By the grace of God, by their genetics, by their own fortitude, they've survived in a hostile environment. But you can only compete with other groups if you thrive. It's like you expect kids that came from poor basketball programs coming up. They were never taught. They were never coached. They were never anything. Actually, get out of school, get out of high school, go through college, and become NBA players. And then not only become NBA players, actually get into the NBA and win the titles year after year after year. You can't preach power. You can't whine and complain about power and how come you don't have it. You either do the work or you don't. You can't complain about Chicago Cubs or Chicago White Sox or the Chicago Bears not winning every year, right? Complaining, griping about it's not going to do anything. Basically, you get a 100-year curse. Until somebody at some point decides, guess what, we're not going to do this anymore. We're actually going to grind down and put the system together and actually do the work to actually get the outcome. The Chinese don't complain. Why do you think they are where they are right now? Because they don't complain. They get together, they do the work. And over time, guess what? That work will pay off. What part of that fucking simple equation don't you get? But yet nobody talks about it. Everybody talks about niggas and born in single mother households, which you haven't changed in 50 years. In the 60 years ago, 70 years ago, basically, black women decided they were going to take welfare and become single mothers. And over time, they grew as a group. Black men didn't decide that for them. They decided that for themselves. And all the government did was facilitate it. That's an environment that you don't control, it's soil that you're not going to influence. You don't control it now. You ain't got enough guns. You don't have enough weapons. You don't have enough work. You don't have enough knowledge. You can't even form your own schools. And then when you try to, guess who fights against you? Can't even tell your own women to pick proper fathers. Can't even tell your own women to do the goddamn work so that you can have proper children. And guess who backs them up? The government. You back black men, you have no power in this country. You're too small of a group. You're 6% of this country, probably less than that. As adult black males, you're probably only like 5% of the country. And basically, of that group, only half of that group is functional. So you're talking about the 2% that an uneven playing field is supposed to change the whole country and take power of the greatest military and financial entity that's ever been on this planet. This is not a banana republic. You are not going to shift this weight. This rock is way too big. And if you shift wrong, it's going to crush you. And everybody knows it. Everybody talks about it because at the end of the day, they know there ain't shit you can do about it. So everybody crows and beats their chest like they can do something. Until them boys with 3 letters on their chest and the back of their shirt show up and kick in your door. And then all of a sudden, you're not so alpha. So miss me with that. You know what? This ramble which turned into a rant, is so disconnected that I'm going to end it here. And I'm going to try to edit and make some sense out of it and put this up. But it just frustrates me. I keep hearing this stuff over and over again. And they know good and goddamn well that shit don't work. Just like it didn't work for reparations, did it, Jason? Anyway, with that, that's all I got. This is BGS out. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.